You know that gut clench moment when you're halfway through a corner and something feels wrong? Maybe the bike starts to push wide. Maybe you feel like you're fighting the handlebars. Or maybe your heart just jumps into your throat because you realize you're not in control the way you thought you were. Here's the thing. You're not a bad rider. Most cornering problems come down to 5 specific mistakes that sneak up on riders every single day. I've made every one of these mistakes myself, some of them multiple times, and I've watched countless riders struggle with the exact same issues. Today, we're breaking down the 5 biggest cornering mistakes that separate nervous riders from confident ones. These aren't just technique tips. We're talking about mistakes that can wear out your bike, burn through tires, and in the worst cases, put you in real danger. Let's jump into mistake number 1, the deadly stare. You've heard it before. Look where you want to go. Sounds simple, right? But when you're leaned over in a corner, your brain wants to do the exact opposite. Instead of looking through the turn, riders lock their eyes on the guardrail, that patch of gravel, or the oncoming car drifting toward the center line. Last month, I watched a rider fixate on a pothole mid-corner and ride straight into it. Not because he couldn't steer around it, because his eyes dragged him right to it. That's target fixation, and it's physics in action. Your bike goes exactly where your eyes go, period. Here's what's happening mechanically. When you stare down at the road in front of your tire, your steering inputs get choppy and your line becomes unpredictable. Your brain processes the wrong information, and suddenly that smooth corner turns into a wrestling match with physics. The fix is simple, but takes practice. Push your vision forward through the corner. Before you even tip in, turn your head and look at the farthest point you can see through the turn. Lock your eyes there and trust the bike to follow. Try this drill. Find a wide, safe corner and ride it repeatedly, forcing yourself to look farther through it each time. It feels weird at first, like you're not paying attention to what's right in front of you. But once it clicks, you'll ride smoother lines with less effort. There's a mechanical consequence here too. Poor lines from bad vision wear your tires unevenly and stress your suspension components. When you're constantly correcting mid-corner because your eyes are in the wrong place, you're asking your bike to work harder than it needs to. The death grip. New riders especially clamp onto those handlebars like their life depends on it. Hands locked, arms stiff as steel, shoulders tense. And that tension is exactly what makes the bike feel sketchy in the first place. Here's what happens. Your motorcycle is engineered to be stable. The fork geometry, the gyroscopic effect of the wheels, the suspension, it all works together to keep things smooth. But when you death grip the bars with rigid arms, you fight against that natural stability. Every little road imperfection transfers straight through your stiff arms into your body, and your tension feeds right back into the handlebars. I've seen new riders create tank slappers and wobbles simply because they were too tense. The bike wants to self-correct, but their rigid body position won't let it. Your grip should be firm but relaxed, like holding a screwdriver, not hanging onto the edge of a cliff. Keep your elbows slightly bent and your shoulders loose. The moment your upper body tenses up, the bike feels twitchy and unpredictable. Body position errors make this worse. Sitting bolt upright in the center of the seat, not shifting your weight at all, you're making the bike do all the work. When you and the bike lean together, you share the workload. The tires don't have to dig as deep, and the suspension feels less strained. Here's the physics of countersteering. Loose arms are crucial. When you need to make steering inputs, rigid arms fight the natural lean and make everything feel forced. With relaxed arms, countersteering becomes intuitive. The proper technique involves core engagement. Use your legs to grip the tank gently and engage your core to support your upper body. This takes weight off your hands and frees up the bars to do their job. Even sliding your butt half an inch to the inside and dropping your inside shoulder makes a massive difference. There's a mechanical consequence to fighting your bike constantly. Premature steering head bearing wear happens when you're constantly wrestling with the handlebars instead of working with the bike's natural geometry. Those bearings are designed for smooth steering inputs, not constant tension and jerky corrections. Here's where things get dangerous fast. You roll into a corner feeling confident, then suddenly your brain screams, "Too fast!" Your hand reacts before you think, and you grab the brakes mid-corner. In that split second, the bike stands up, your line goes wide, and you're drifting toward the guardrail or oncoming traffic. I've seen this exact scenario play out dozens of times. Rider enters a decreasing radius turn, realizes they're carrying too much speed, panics, and grabs a handful of brake. The physics disaster that follows is predictable. When you brake while leaned over, you're overloading the front tire that's already handling cornering forces. The bike wants to straighten up and push wide. In the worst case, you lose traction completely. Here's what's happening mechanically. Braking mid-corner shifts weight abruptly to the front wheel, unloads the rear, and compresses the suspension unevenly. That sudden weight transfer makes the bike unstable and unpredictable. Rolling off the throttle mid-corner creates the same weight transfer chaos, just in the opposite direction. There's a difference between trail braking and panic braking. Trail braking is an advanced technique where experienced riders lightly feather the front brake as they lean in, gradually releasing it through the turn. Panic braking is grabbing a handful of brake because you screwed up your entry speed. One is controlled, the other is a recipe for disaster. The solution follows the slow in, fast out principle. Do your braking before the corner while the bike is still upright. Approach every turn with the mentality that you'll scrub off excess speed in a straight line, then commit to your line once you tip in. Proper throttle technique through corners means smooth, steady application. Even just maintaining consistent throttle through the curve keeps weight planted on the rear wheel and the suspension balanced. Better yet, a gentle roll-on as you exit plants the rear tire and keeps the bike tracking tight through the turn. The mechanical impact of poor throttle and brake timing is serious. Uneven tire wear happens when you're constantly upsetting the bike's balance. Brake pads glaze from excessive heat when you're doing hard braking mid-corner. Suspension components take a beating from the constant weight transfer and harsh inputs that come from panic reactions. Here's something most riders never consider. Sometimes the problem isn't your technique, it's your bike. You can have perfect body position and smooth inputs, but if your tires are worn or your suspension is set up wrong, corners will feel sketchy no matter what you do. Worn tires with squared-off profiles are cornering killers. When your tire's contact patches flatten the middle from highway riding, it doesn't want to lean over smoothly. Instead, it feels like you're riding on a knife edge when you try to corner. The bike feels unstable and unpredictable because the tire isn't giving you consistent feedback. I worked with a rider last year who was convinced he was terrible in corners. Turns out his rear tire was completely squared off and down to the wear bars. New rubber transformed his confidence overnight. He wasn't a bad rider. His bike setup was working against him. Tire pressure affects everything about cornering. Too high and you get a smaller contact patch with harsh feedback. Too low and the tire overheats, squirms under load, and wears unevenly. Most riders never check their pressure, but it changes with temperature and altitude. What felt right last month might be completely wrong today. Suspension settings that don't match your weight or riding style make corners feel unpredictable. If your bike is set up for a 140-pound rider and you weigh 200 pounds, the suspension won't work properly. It'll bottom out under hard cornering loads, pack down under braking, and generally feel unstable. Basic suspension checks you can do yourself include checking for leaks around fork seals, making sure your sag is set correctly for your weight, and ensuring your rebound damping isn't too fast or too slow. Your owner's manual has baseline settings, but they're just starting points. Here's how to inspect tires for cornering specific wear patterns. Look for uneven wear across the tire's width. That indicates suspension problems or incorrect pressure. Check for cupping or scalloping on the edges. That's usually from aggressive cornering on worn suspension. Cracks in the sidewall or tread compound mean it's time for new rubber, period. The connection between bike setup and rider confidence is huge. When your bike feels stable and predictable, you naturally ride with more confidence. When something feels off, you tense up, make poor decisions, and create the very problems you're trying to avoid. Sometimes the fix isn't more practice. It's fresh tires and properly adjusted suspension. Here's the mistake that gets riders into the most trouble: entering corners too hot and taking the wrong line. You roll up to a sweeping curve feeling confident, carry too much speed into the turn, and suddenly you're running out of lean angle with nowhere to go. Your options become target fixation on the guardrail or a desperate attempt to make the bike lean farther than physics allows. Last summer, I watched a rider take an early apex on a blind corner and run wide straight into oncoming traffic. He survived barely, but it was completely preventable. The problem wasn't just speed, it was line selection that made a manageable corner into a death trap. Here's what happens when you enter too hot. You reach the limits of your lean angle or available traction before you've completed the turn. The bike wants to stand up and go straight, pushing you wide toward the outside of the corner. That's when panic sets in and riders make even worse decisions. Taking the wrong line makes corners harder than they need to be. Most street riders instinctively aim for the early apex, turning in early and hitting the inside of the corner as soon as possible. This feels natural, but it's actually the most dangerous line you can take. Early apex means you're pointed toward the outside edge of the road with nowhere to go if something goes wrong. Decreasing radius turns are the worst for this mistake. They look like gentle sweepers from the entrance, fooling you into carrying too much speed. But as the turn tightens up, you realize you're in trouble. The corner keeps getting sharper, but you're already committed to a line and speed that won't work. The late apex technique is safer for street riding because it keeps your options open. Instead of diving for the inside early, you stay wide on entry, turn in later, and apex past the geometric center of the corner. This line gives you a better view through the turn and points you towards safety instead of oncoming traffic. Reading corners properly takes practice. Look for visual clues like guardrail height, tree lines, and road surface changes that tell you what's coming. A decreasing radius turn often shows itself through these subtle signs before you're committed to a bad line. Speed adjustment should happen before you can see the full corner. If you wait until you're already turning to decide you're going too fast, it's too late for smooth corrections. The key is being honest about your limits and leaving margin for the unexpected. The mechanical consequences are serious. Tire overheating happens when you're asking for maximum grip at excessive speeds. The rubber gets greasy, loses traction, and can fail catastrophically. Suspension bottoming occurs when you're carrying too much speed and the bike runs out of travel under hard cornering loads. In extreme cases, this leads to crashes that could have been avoided with better speed and line selection. Most cornering problems are fixable with knowledge and practice. You don't need to be a racer or take advanced courses to ride corners confidently. These 5 mistakes, target fixation, death grip, poor throttle and brake timing, ignoring bike setup and speed misjudgment, account for probably 90% of the cornering issues riders face. Here's your action plan. Start with your bike setup. Check your tire pressure, inspect your rubber for wear patterns, and make sure your suspension isn't completely shot. You can't ride smoothly on equipment that's working against you. Then focus on one technique at a time. Don't try to fix everything at once. Maybe this week you concentrate on pushing your vision forward through corners. Next week, work on relaxing those arms and trusting the bike's stability. The week after that, practice your throttle control and brake timing. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Every rider makes mistakes, but the difference between nervous riders and confident ones is learning from those mistakes before they become dangerous habits. If this helped you understand why corners have been giving you trouble, smash that like button and subscribe for more hard-earned riding lessons. Drop a comment and tell me which of these mistakes you've been making. Let's learn from each other's experiences. Ride safe.